Human rights lawyer Inibehe Effiong has been released after spending 30 days at the Nigerian Correctional Centre, Uyo, for alleged contempt of court. He was imprisoned on the orders of the Chief Judge of the state, Justice Ekaite Obot, at the Kotekmene Correctional Centre before he was moved to the Uyo facility. The Chief Judge on the 27th of July sentenced Mr. Effiong to prison after the lawyer objected to the presence of two armed police operatives in the courtroom. Many lawyers, including the Nigerian Bar Association, condemned this sentencing, saying it did not follow due process. The lawyer stepped out of the prison around 8 a.m. today, awaiting a waiting crowd of supporters. Addressing reporters and supporters, the activist says it was an honor to be incarcerated for the truth. Meanwhile, the NBA has filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal in Calabar, Cross River, urging the appellate court to set aside his conviction on the grounds that it was unconstitutional. And human rights lawyer Inibehe Effiong now joins me to discuss his incarceration and more. Good to have you join us.
Good to be back.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
It is good to see you, Inibehe. But I mean, so we had a version of that story as so you objecting to the presence of two armed police officers, I think there were in court. But just briefly, maybe like a minute, talk to us about what exactly played out in that courtroom that led to the sentencing by the judge.
Thank you. Now, I got to the court on the 27th of July, 2022, accompanied by a colleague of mine by name Augustine, to represent my client in a defamation suit filed by the current governor of Akwa Ibom State, Udom Emmanuel, against my client, Mr. Uyo Correctional. By the time I arrived at the court, my lord came in. Immediately, my lord arrived, even before we announced appearances. My lord announced to the hearing of all that his lordship was coming in with anger and that my lord was not going to tolerate nonsense from anybody. I'm saying exactly what his lordship said. And then my lord ordered the orderly attached to his lordship, the chief judge, to bring in policemen into the court. Where are the policemen? That is what my lord was saying. Where are the policemen? And then my lord was very furious. My lord kept yelling at with profound respect, I say so, kept yelling at the orderly. And the orderly basically ran out of the court, and the proceedings was halted for a while. Nothing happened. We could not announce our names, or we could not announce our appearances. Moments after, the orderly came back into the court, accompanied by two mobile policemen, kitted, heavily armed with AK-47 each. One side to my right, one side to my left behind me. And then because of the antecedents of the matter, because we already have pending before the court, a motion that we filed on the 23rd of June, 2022, asking his lordship, the Honorable Chief Judge, to recuse himself and disqualify himself from further hearing the matter and reassign the case to another judge on grounds of bias or likelihood of bias. So after we had announced appearances, I reminded his lordship of the pending application for recusal because we had, with all due respect, lost confidence in the ability of the court to determine the matter dispassionately. But of course, my lord, as it has always been, shouted me down and said that the court would take that application whenever the court deems fit. I obeyed the court. I didn't argue with his lordship. And then my court asked that we should proceed with the continuation of cross-examination, which is what the matter was adjourned for. The witness was called. He entered the door, a certain individual, and then I started cross-examining him. As I was on the second or third question, I think, my lord interrupted me and then pointed at the journalist who was seated in the gallery by name Mr. Savior, a reporter with Premium Times, and ordered him to stand up and identify himself. And the gentleman identified himself. Meanwhile, the reason that this is important is because this journalist had been sent out of that court before. So this particular journalist is known to the court. He's not the only journalist who was in court, but because Premium Times has been following the case, a lot, from all indications, may have had some very personal negative opinion, about the presence of the journalist in that court. So it had nothing to do with the journalist bringing phone to record whatever was happening.
I just have to jump in because I think that to an extent, sorry, Inibehe, I had to jump in. So I just wanted to be sure because I know that we have this story. And then there was also the issue of two armed men. So I just want to be sure that it does follow, and it does follow. But I can't help but also notice that you were looking quite slimmer, and then I know you used to have beards as well, and I can't also help but notice that they are gone. Talk to us about your experience behind bars.
Well, two things. If I regarding my beard, I must say clearly that I was tortured while in detention. What you read was true. There is no dispute on that. It is quite unfortunate that that had to happen. I was taken to the Inibehe Custodial Centre on the 27th of July, and I stayed there. They said I was supposed to stay for 2 weeks, you know. Meanwhile, immediately I got to the Custodial Centre, they took 50,000 from me for what they call a special cell. And there is nothing special about the said special cell. I slept on the floor with just a small mattress. There is nothing in the cell that is special. But then I had to pay 50,000 for that 2 weeks. And now they said they were going to relocate me after the 2 weeks. The 2 weeks came, the day of the relocation. You know, a gentleman came to me and said, oh, you were going to court, you had a court date. And I said that was not true. So I went to the records at the Custodial Centre in Inibehe to find out. And they said, oh, sorry, they apologized. There was misinformation that I was meant to be transferred and not to be taken to court. So this was already past 8. And then they were saying that they needed to take me alongside another inmate by name Moses Armstrong, who had a court date on that same day, the 10th of August. And then, because they were hurrying to meet up the 9 o'clock time, they did not even give me the decency to take my bath, arrange my things. And then they came, they hurried me, they started shouting that I was wasting their time. Is it because you are this and that? And then I got infuriated. I said, what is the problem? I'm not a criminal, I'm not running away. I have been here for 2 weeks. And you even collected 50,000 from me to keep me here for 2 weeks. Even if you want to relocate me, why not give me reasonable time for me to arrange myself? They took that as an insult. The next thing, the assistant controller in charge of Inibehe Custodial Centre, you know, Mr. Detention, left, came back. This very monstrous human being who immediately handcuffed me. I had already packed my things. I was basically unbound and about to bed. The man came back, and then they immediately hurried me. They handcuffed me. They didn't even allow me to comb my hair. And the gentleman, you know, held me by the neck. I called another very tall and huge officer, and both of them grabbed me back. They basically carried me on my neck up, and they dragged me that way from the inside of the cell where I was, took me outside. By the time they got outside, the van, it was drizzling. They didn't even have the courtesy to allow me enter the inside of the van. Two officers who were in the armed squad were at the back. They didn't even allow me to climb inside, since they did not want me to stay inside with them. They just carried me, fling me inside the van, you know, and then...
Inibehe, allow me to put you on hold. I want to put you on hold, just on hold. We need to go to commercial, and when I return, we would continue with this conversation with you. I find it quite interesting to just learn about your experience. Please hold on and then stay with us. We'll be right back.